Operation Domination is underway. The ultimate game plan to dominate your NFL experience. With your hosts, Dan Maiden.
But what's more impressive to me about the
Case
fact
Thornton.
Yeah, I mean, I got it.
Chris Dowhouse.
Get him, Chase. Get him, Chase.
And Adam
No,
LaRue.
not necessarily, but it's again the same.
Don't hope to win. Be great and dominate.
With that, let's go into the difference makers. This one's for Chris. He's got a few questions to talk about rookies we're targeting and breakout candidates that we're thinking on our list. So, Chris, take it away.
Yeah, so this part of our show is going to be difference makers, and we're looking at how to dominate by design. We have lots of tips of things that we're looking for players-wise. So these rookies, we've done a lot of, we covered them in the draft. We've talked a lot at length about them in training camp and rookie camp, what they've been bringing to the table. So I'm going to ask you guys, what rookie are you guys targeting the most? And we'll start off with Adam. Adam, what rookie are you targeting the most in redraft?
You're gonna hate me because I'm gonna do it again. Look, I am happily going to walk away with Jermaine Burton in the last couple rounds of drafts. That receiver spot has had value. We've seen, injuries with T. Higgins. We, have seen a bunch of different things with T. Higgins as far as injuries, as far as contract, as far as, is he going to go to another team? There's been so many question marks with him. And when he was on the field last year, he didn't really play that well, even with, Joe Burrow. Now, obviously, injuries played a part of that on both his part and Joe Burrow's. But nonetheless, outside of Jamar Chase, I don't know how confident I am in this receiver room. Again, I think T. Higgins is a really good player, but to say that it's locked in, that he's this, going to be fantastic, lights out this year, I'm not necessarily sure that I'm there. I am confident in him as a player long term, but things happen. And look, I think Jermaine Burton has a really good fit regardless of T. Higgins. I think he's another dynamic deep threat for when. If you're shading guys over on Jamar, great. You have another guy that can break open deep. And he's so far, reports out of training camp are positive. And he's a guy who, look, I think most concerns for him were character related. It sounds like, between former Bengals and current Bengals, he's getting a lot of mentorship. So I loved him coming in. I have seen no reason to move off. So he's someone that I think is a sneaky flyer for me that I'm going to keep running with.
So Adam's going Jermaine Burton, a guy that, isn't on a lot of redraft. And I'll just say this, Adam, I think I could tell you play a lot of dynasty football.
We need to make a drinking game where we take a shot every time Adam mentions Jermaine Burton or Audric Estime, because it's like every episode. I'm just saying, buddy.
Well, I like the drinking game, but I also think it's a really interesting take, and that's, the guy that all different rookies we talked about is definitely a guy that's off the radar. So I'm going to go to you, Dan. What rookie are you targeting the most in redrafts?
This is a no-brainer for me. It's Jayden Daniels. I'm 10 spots higher than ECR right now. I got him ranked at 78th overall, and that's 29 spots higher than ADP. And I just don't get, when you have a quarterback who has the upside of a Kyler Murray, of an Anthony Richardson sitting there like that 5-6 turn right now on most ECR boards, because he's going to have the rushing. And we do know he at least has a decent deep ball with wide receivers like Terry McLaurin to be able to throw to. We'll see we get a Jahan Dotson and Luke McCaffrey. Again, I just go back to it. Kyler Murray was a top 5 quarterback with Cliff Kingsbury. I don't see a big difference in their skill set of how they're going to approach the game between Jayden Daniels and Kyler Murray. And you're talking about a guy you're going to be drafting as QB 11, QB 12, home league drafts. It might even be later in double-digit rounds. So for me, it's no brainer. It's been Jayden Daniels. I think I've had him in almost every single draft.
So Dan's looking for that quarterback edge and going Jayden Daniels. How about you, Chase?
You son of a... You took mine, but because I agree with you. Jayden Daniels is everything that I think we all want to be getting in Anthony Richardson for a much more palatable draft price. And I'm not as worried about him getting injured as I am right now with Anthony Richardson. Not saying I won't take a shot on Richardson at some point, possibly, but Jayden Daniels was mine. So I'll zig when you guys are zagging here, to take a phrase from Chris there. Jonathon Brooks is, listen, rookie running backs we know can have a a big impact in this league. We know that they can come in and they can be impactful and they can be successful right away. If he shows that he's healthy enough to be out there from the get-go, he was the best running back prospect in this draft by far. He's going to be the top weapon on that offense when they run the ball. I think that he's going to be a nice outlet as they try to right the ship with Bryce Young there. So I think he'll be a nice little dump off target there for him as well. So Jonathon Brooks will be somebody that I will be keeping an eye on there as well. Although Dan did steal my guy with Jayden Daniels.
Going Jonathon Brooks, we're kind of skipping this draft class, no matter receivers, other than Jermaine Burton, we're kind of skipping over the receivers as guys we're targeting.
Price, dude.
I'm going to go with you guys, and I'm going to skip over the receivers as well, and I'm going to go with Caleb Williams, the other quarterback. Look, we talked about Jayden Daniels, the cheat code, the legs. Caleb Williams can scrimp around a little bit too. We've seen what CJ Stroud did last year. I'm not going to say Caleb Williams is going to be CJ Stroud, but what I can say is I think Caleb Williams actually could be better than CJ Stroud. I think with the weapons he has in place, he has better than receivers starting off right off the bat. I like what he has weapons-wise, and I think Caleb Williams is one of those guys who is one of the top talents that we've seen in the last decade. And to remind people of that, we all got down on him, last year, what kind of happened to USC. Maybe he's not as good as we thought he was. We're going to see. Well, I think we're going to see this guy's going to come out with guns blazing with the 3 receivers that he has, a nice backfield. And I love Caleb Williams as a guy that, as Dan talked about, as my quarterback. I go a little bit higher than most people because he's that guy I like as that option as a starting quarterback this year as well. So let's go for other rookies we're talking about.
We got a question coming in from
Chris
Bird here. He's in a 12-team super flex league. It's a 1-keeper league. He's got the 5th pick, and he wants to know, would we keep Henry, assuming Derrick Henry, in the 2nd round, Debo in the 4th, or Tua in the 5th round? I'm probably the wrong guy to ask this because to me it's Debo in the 4th round because he's a top 12 wide receiver on my board. So that's the value pick for me. Although Tua in the super flex league in the 5th isn't too far off either. So that's where I would lean. Rapid fire, Chase, Chris, then Adam.
I'm Tua.
No, yeah, I'm agreeing with you that it's Debo. You keep the best player in this situation. Don't overthink it too much. As if you think that quarterbacks are going to be very, very scarce, you could think about keeping Tua, but Debo's the best player on that board. Take it.
Consider Tua.
Yeah, I'm going Tua. Super flex. I'm always going to try to get the quarterback, and especially a guy that has upside like Tua does.
Adam. Tua. Okay. So 2 for 2. Yeah, can't argue that again. Super flex 5th round quarterback. Hard to argue there. I'm just kind of curious. The super flex leagues, and I'm playing a number of them. Chris, there's somebody you're big on. Caleb Williams, that you just mentioned, might be going in around the same territory. Maybe even the 6th round.
Then I'm loading up on both. Bring it.
I'm assuming he's taking a quarterback before that. That was just my thought. Yeah.
Super flex.
Only Jordan Love is getting kept for a quarterback. So, okay. Well, that's that. If there's more quarterbacks on the board, like I said, I would lean more towards Debo, but I think Debo or Tua are your answers there. Okay, Chris, go ahead.
All right. So we talked about the rookies. And Adam, this one we have to kind of, make sure that you don't cheat necessarily. And we're looking at where we have the greatest ADP difference on where we have our rookie versus the rookies that, where everybody else is taking them. So we know Jermaine Burton is obviously your answer, Adam, because you're way higher than ECR ADP in the whole world than Jermaine Burton. But outside of Jermaine Burton, what other rookie are you considerably higher or lower? It doesn't have to necessarily be a positive thing. We can stick with your negative thing. Higher or lower than the other ADP and ECRs?
First of all, I would wager that Jermaine Burton's mom and him himself are higher on him than I am. So I'm no greater than 3rd.
Planet, but yeah, sure.
Yeah, not highest on the planet. I'm like 3rd.
I want to see if they draft him in their redraft leagues, but go ahead.
Ouch.
At any rate, I think my next answer technically would be Adonai Mitchell, not someone who I would have them in about the same tier. But I believe, he's well undrafted and redrafted at the current moment. Look, but I think he's an incredibly talented player. I definitely, with the Anthony Richardson concerns, with the passing game concerns, I get the risk. But as far as a talent, I think there are receivers he's much more talented than, going much earlier than he is. So as far as EDP or ADP is concerned, I think that is my biggest gap and higher.
Okay, Donnie Mitchell. How about you, Dan?
The rookie I have the greatest, and it's bigger than Jayden Daniels. I have the greatest ADP difference on is actually Brian Thomas Jr. I have him ranked at 96 overall, plus 21 spots over ECR, plus 25 spots over the ADP. Look, he could easily start the year as the third highest targeted pass catcher within that offense, given Kirk's, Christian Kirk, that is, and Evan Ingram's history of not really scoring a ton of touchdowns, even as lead targeted wide receivers. I really wouldn't be surprised if we saw Brian Thomas be the lead receiver for touchdowns of that Jaguars offense this season. So I have the biggest difference on him according to ADP.
All right. How about you, Chase? What ADP difference do you have for a player that you might like or dislike?
I am going to duck all of the accusations of this being a hater pick just because he's in division, but it's JJ McCarthy for me. I have him at quarterback 35 right now. He's going off the board as like quarterback 21. I'm 14 spots lower than him. How the hell anybody has him going as a quarterback 2 when he's not even going to start the season and may not start at all this season, or if he does, it'll be very late in the season, is beyond me. Why you guys are all taking him, not you guys necessarily, but why he's going as quarterback 21, it shocks me. Darnold has already basically won that job himself. They have a plan, and all they have to do is look a short 4-hour drive to the east to Green Bay to see how well it behooves a team to let that guy develop even if you draft him high, even if you draft him in the first round. Let that guy develop for a while. Don't stick him in there to the Wolves. It's a team that isn't going anywhere anyway. They have no reason to stick that guy in there. It's going to be Darnold's job longer than anybody wants it to be. So I am not touching JJ McCarthy with a 10-foot pole in redraft. Dynasty-wise, different story.
That's terrible.
I like it, Chase. We talked about JJ McCarthy. Obviously, you're not excited about what he can do this year, and I'm with you. That was actually the guy that I had as well. I think this is the guy that I don't even know why we're talking about JJ McCarthy this year in any kind of capacity. I don't think he's going to be a guy who's going to be relevant fantasy-wise anytime soon, maybe next year, maybe 2 years, but right now isn't a guy that I expect to see at the field anytime soon.
It really, really sucks. Water sucks.
He does suck. All right, so let's speed it up a little bit. Let's kind of get some rapid answers here for you. Let's look at some of our second-year players. And we're going to talk about some of the second-year guys that we think are going to have that we're looking to target for our teams. What are some of the second-year guys that you have are targeting most for your fantasy redrafts this year? We'll start off with Chase. We'll work back the other way around.
Bijan, because he's about the only one whose ADP really lines up with the value that I believe he has. And that might be an easy pick, but like I said, his perceived value to me lines up exactly with where I think he's going in drafts. I'm not going to have to pay up or reach for him. If I take him, I'm getting him right where I think I should be getting him, which is right there in the middle of the first round, early to mid first round. So I will be, in terms of targeting, Bijan.
Captain Obvious. It's another obvious answer for me. It's Dalton Kincaid. Look, when you're looking for an elite tight end, the biggest key besides touchdown, which is always a factor for tight ends, but you need somebody who has the pathway to be the number one pass catcher on that team. Dalton Kincaid has that pathway, no matter what we think about him, no matter what's going on in Buffalo, to be the lead target for that team. And that's why I like Dalton Kincaid a lot. And we can get him for a 5th round, 6th round pick. He kind of breaks off that tier for me of the top 5 tight ends. You don't have to pay up for the 2nd, 3rd round like you do for the Travis Kelce, Sam Laporta, and Trey McBride right now are kind of going that high. So that's, for me, is Dalton Kincaid.
All right, Adam, what guy are you looking for the second-year breakout are you targeting?
Well, I'm going to go directly against what you said in our segment, and I am willing to gamble on Anthony Richardson. And look, I completely understand the not wanting to. I think it's just, look, call it homerism. I get it, whatever. I think to me, it's just difference in risk aversion. I am going to gamble a lot in drafts. That's the same thing with Jermaine Burton. I'd just rather have a gamble than a roster clogger at the end of a draft. Right. And that's my personal play style. I take a lot of dart throws. I also join a lot of leagues. So I'm not that concerned about, risk because some are going to hit. But at any rate,
if you're okay doing a super fragile build, he's a great, I actually can't see it, but I have his name written down right there. So no, you're not wrong in saying you want to but I don't know if I'm targeting him.
Right. And maybe being a Colts fan is what puts it over from a very good gamble to also I'm going to target him. And that's, a very, very fair. But also like the physical aspect, seeing what I saw on a points per game basis, and just knowing how weak the quarterback position was last year. I think that there's, a lot of ways that could go, but there's certainly, a timeline in which he could end as a top 3 quarterback and actually beat the ADP. There's also a timeline in which he plays 3 games, and that's, a risk I'm willing to take personally.
So I like the drop. I like it. The guy that I'm going to go with is, we talked about this guy earlier in the show, referring to the guy we did not like, and Zach Moss. I'm going to go with Chase Brown. I think Chase Brown's value is outstanding. A guy that you can pretty much get in the teens. A guy that I think could actually wind up being the bell cow of the backfield sooner than later. A better pass catcher of the backfield than Zach Moss, more explosive than Zach Moss. So Chase Brown's a guy that I've been finding myself as my RB4, RB5, who I think is just is a sweet guy to have on your team that could have a huge upside and for the stretch run, and also be a guy that you don't have to reach for and get your hands on. All right, so let's go for a more current. Let's kind of wrap it up with these last 2 questions for my part. And the last 2 questions, first of all, where are you guys looking at some of the players that you're making sure that you get your hands on? A glue player. We know Adam has Jermaine Burton on probably all his teams, whether it's whatever he's drafting, PPR, full point PPR, half PPR. But when we're talking about half point PPR that we usually do on this show, who is that core player or a guy that you are making sure that you must have for your team? And, just kind of throw this out here. Let's try to avoid going guys like a Bijan Robinson in the first round because, depending on what pick you have, you're probably not going to get that guy. But let's
you asked about targets. I don't listen.
I love
the first round is about the only round I actually try to target anybody in, because if I'm trying to lock myself into taking a player later, I may be missing out on a player at better value who falls. I don't want to lock myself into anything and have like the overarching plan going into the draft that I'm going to stick to no matter what the hell happens. And then if I wind up taking a dude in the 4th who I should have been waiting for the 7th or 8th round to take. So yeah, in terms of a guy that I was targeting, Bijan would be a guy that I'm targeting in the first round and actually actively going out and seeking. Past that, I don't necessarily like to lock myself into guys. So.
Okay. So Dan, we'll go to you for this question as well.
Yes.
You're looking at a player that you want to kind of have as your glue player. And, I understand you're saying, Chase, you don't lock yourself in, but there's usually some guys that you have a good idea where the value is.
Oh, yeah.
Is there some guys, Dan, that you have as that glue player, a guy like is going to probably be on the board for you that you're going to be having most of your rosters if you're drafting?
Well, a glue player is a core player. A core player, typically speaking, is going somewhere in the first couple of rounds, 2nd, 3rd, 4th round in particular, after you get out of the first round, which is, of course, usually your main player. I have 2 guys. One guy I talk about all the time, which is Chris Olave. So I don't want to talk about Chris Olave on this show, but I am going to go to the guy I've ranked just 1 spot below him, and that's Drake London. Look, I don't understand the people out there have suddenly cooled off on the idea like, well, Drake London, there's a lot of questions about his production over the past couple of years, acting like there hasn't been Arthur Smith and Marcus Mariota and Desmond Ridder he's had to deal with in the process. It makes absolutely no sense to me. Read the room, guys. Kirk Cousins is there. Zach Robinson's there. If Kirk Cousins can't go, now we have Michael Penix there. I mean, the guy had 117 targets, 110 targets in his first 2 years on a run-first, shoddy quarterback play team. Of all the guys that I'm predicting to take one of the biggest target jumps this season, it is Drake London, where he should be at plus 140 within that offense, given the lack of other pass catchers besides Kyle Pitts around him. So to me, Drake London, a guy that you're drafting in the 2nd round, some even drafting in the 3rd round, because again, there's people trying to push this narrative that there's question marks about his production. That's a glue player for me that you can get there on a pivot.
Adam, you have a glue guy that you're looking at.
Yeah, for me, it's DJ Moore. I have him like closing in on double-digit spots above ECR. I love DJ Moore this year. I will go out on the record to go as far as to say I believe right now he's at 20.5 point PPR on the ECR. I think it's more likely that he is a wide receiver 1 in a 12 team than he is in the 20s. That, to me, 20 is ridiculous. I can see in the mid-teens, and that's fine. I can accept that. 20 is ridiculous. DJ Moore is going to improve upon last year because Caleb Williams is a massive improvement over Justin Fields. And I like Justin Fields a lot, but Caleb Williams is a massive leap forward. So for me, he's someone who I love in the first couple rounds as a wide receiver option.
I like it. So for myself, it's going to be David Montgomery as a guy that I find that, is almost always there around 6 or 7, a guy who has potential to be an RB2 in your lineup, but you don't have to necessarily spend that draft capital. One of the guys, when we get into those lower tiers of running backs, I have less questions about than the other guys. I'm not worried about his carries, not worried about him splitting touches with somebody. I already got a good idea what's going to happen, and this guy's going to get a lot of touchdowns. So I like David Montgomery as a guy that I've been able to kind of get consistently as, if you're trying to stretch around, trying to not go with the RBs early option. He's a guy that you can feel safe having as your RB2, but also like a guy, like I said, if he's my RB3 or 4, I'm feeling really good.
If there's a guy that I'm gunning for, not in the first round, it would be Michael Lynn Evans III down in Tampa Bay. 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns, book it.
Well, so for
that's the floor. That's the floor. Take that.
Okay, I like
take
that.
As when he's going as wide receiver 16 through 19. Take that.
So that brings us to our final question, which is a 2-parter. First of all, who is that player that you are targeting or you're trying to get as that game winner, as that, this guy's, I think, based on the value, based on if I get him on my team, this guy could win it all for me. Who is that guy that you're aiming for? And the second part of the question will be, name, if you can, a duo that might be able to do what Puka Nacua and Kyren Williams did last year, where they came out of nowhere, basically first and second year players coming off, both drafted fifth round or later, and were able to be fantasy relevant and super productive. So 2-part question. Number 1 is, who's the guy that you're trying to target to make sure that, this guy's going to bring me a championship this year? And who's the guys that maybe could be those surprise guys that maybe you add on your waivers after the season starts?
I'll start it off. James Conner has been a top 10 running back in points per game each of the last 3 seasons, ever since he walked into Arizona. You guys hate on him.
I don't.
But the man can play some freaking football. He's good in that offense. They're going to be a better offense this year passing the ball, which means less pressure on him. James Conner, top 10 running back in points per game each of the last 3 seasons, and you guys all discount him.
Chase, do you have a guy that for a duo that might be able to do what Kyren and Puka did last year, off the radar guys?
It might not necessarily be, first year, both of them first year guys, but
first second year guys.
Caleb Williams and Roschon Johnson in Chicago could turn that on. I could see DeAndre Swift didn't do anything special when he was in one of the best offenses in the league last season in Philadelphia. It's no guarantee he holds on to that job or takes the bulk of the carries even in that job all season too. So by the end of the season,
I'm going to have to disqualify your question and answer for this one because I'm sorry. Caleb Williams is not one of the options. Kyren Williams was drafted in the 5th round. Puka Nacua was drafted in the 5th round.
Okay, listen, late ass round pick.
So Dan, I like Roschon Johnson as an option, but that's not 2 players. Go ahead, Dan.
Well, I'll just answer your second part first. 0. There's just nobody in a position to put up a Puka Nacua and Kyren Williams and what they were able to do last season. You'd have to get all the fairy dust in the world to make up a scenario where that's even coming close. But to answer your first question, the guy who I've been targeting as a guy who I think could actually legitimately be a league winner, and I think it's going to shock some people, is Ramondre Stevenson. They paid this guy to give him all the work in the world. Yeah. And look, I hate Scott Van Pelt as much as the next person, but what does he come from? A system that just features the hell out of the running back. And when you melt that in with the idea that Stevenson is going 58th overall, as RB19 overall, I have him as a top 12 running back right now. I am big on the idea Ramondre Stevenson can give you that full package as your RB2, wind up being an RB1, and carry you through with the value that we're talking about here, because the volume's going to be insane for Ramondre this season. He is the offense for the New England Patriots, which I do think won't be great, but will be better than what we had last season.
We're going to blow the whistle and throw a flag on you real quick, Dan, because you jumped all over Chris for getting Justin Tolbert's name wrong. Scott Van Pelt, the ESPN host of the late night show, has nothing to do with the New England offense. But Alex Van Pelt, all of your points would hold completely.
Fine. Alex Van Pelt, you're right. You got me.
I like it. And Dan says there's no chance of the Kyren and Puka thing happening again. Adam.
I was gonna say Ramondre as well, or not Ramondre. Sorry.
That's what your reaction for as well. I was like, what? Adam actually disagrees with that pick.
No, I was gonna say Raheem Mostert as far as a guy that I really like going in. But what I will say, as far as to humor your late round guy question,
Thank you.
let me throw out Tyrone Tracy Jr., who I think has a shot in the dark for that backfield, just given the lack of talent. And I do believe in him as a talent. And Kendre Miller, a second year, and I know he was more of a early mid guy, but he had a pretty quiet rookie year behind an aging Alvin Kamara, a guy who hasn't really gotten anything important done on the ground in a while now. And it wouldn't shock me that much to see Kendre Miller, close that gap there. And do I think it's going to happen that he has some blow up year? No, but do I think it's within the realm of possibility? Absolutely.
All right. So Adam's going with guys on two different teams, but I like the players that you kind of mentioned, and I like the player you talked about as game changer for you. For me, it's Cooper Kupp. I talked about this a lot. I'm not going to go too much and far into it. A guy I get in fourth round right now who had been one of the top receivers you could have for 3 or 4 straight years. He's healthy. He's been healthy all off season. Him and Matthew Stafford are back together on the same clicking. To me, if you can get this kind of guy in the third or fourth round, to me is a game changer that I'm definitely want to get my hands on. And to humor myself for the question, Adam, I'm a little down on Jermaine Burton. I'm not as high on him as you are. So my guys, I'm going to go with his Chase Brown and Andre. Make sure I say his name correctly. Yosivas. I think this guy's been taking a lot of snaps with that first team. We talked about different guys taking first team snaps. What that means, it doesn't mean. But I do know that a lot of things have been positive about this guy since he got projected by Cincinnati, a guy they liked a lot last year who got on the field for the team last year. And then Chase Brown, as I talked about, I think he can still Zach Moss's job. So there's two guys I think, if something happens to Jamar Chase or T. Higgins, we were seeing with his injury concerns, there's a similar offense as the Rams that was able to do it. So maybe this team could do it as well.